What's up, guys? Igor Hernandez here. Let's talk trial. I want to talk about the distinctions, or really the main distinctions between federal court as far as trial goes and my jurisdiction, which is Florida State Court. I think most of the people that watch these videos are Florida trial lawyers, and so I think it'd be helpful to get into those distinctions. As a trial lawyer, you don't really care all that much where you're trying the case, or if you've ever tried a case there, or whatever the case may be. That's not particularly something you think about too much, because at the end of the day, put the juror in the box and whatever else happens is standard. It's whatever your trial skills are. For the most part, in any jurisdiction, you will be able to execute. But there are certain distinctions that are very important, especially if you're going from federal to state court. One of those distinctions in federal court, which is completely a game changer if you're coming from state court, at least in my jurisdiction. In Florida State Court, you can do what's called oral voir dire. The lawyers or the parties have a right to have the lawyers question the potential jurors and pretty much ask just about anything they want. It's really anything that's geared towards the intelligent exercise of the peremptory challenges, or anything that's geared to uncover bias or prejudice for either side or against either side. Well, in federal court, you don't have really any right to voir dire. It's not in the rules, and they don't have to give it to you. So for the most part, in most federal jurisdictions, you do not get the right to ask questions. The lawyers don't get the right to ask questions. The judge gets the right to ask the questions, and then the judge may either allow you to ask questions to some extent, or they'll take written questions from you ahead of time, and then they'll review those questions and decide whether they want to ask the questions or whether they're not going to ask the questions at all. So the difference between state voir dire and federal jurisdiction is immense. In fact, you go to federal court and you basically have to come to terms with the fact that you may not be able to really select the jury, that the people that are going to end up in your jury are going to be relative unknowns. And so that's a big difference between federal system and my jurisdiction, Florida State Court. The other big difference in jury selection is that there are no backstrikes. So basically in Florida State Court, you can select, let's say, 6 jurors, and then you can go back and say, no, Judge, I didn't really mean it when I said I wanted number 1 to be in the box. I want to go ahead and exercise the peremptory challenge on number 1, and then we can move on to juror number 7, and so on and so forth. Well, in federal court, there are no backstrikes. So if you said in the beginning, I'm okay with juror number 1, well, you got to eat juror number 1. There's no changing that. You're basically stuck with that juror, which is sort of a big deal. And another huge difference between the federal system jury selection and the state side jury selection is that in the federal system, on the criminal side, there's going to be always 12 jurors, versus in Florida state side, there's going to be 6 jurors unless it's a capital case where either the death penalty is being sought or the death penalty has been waived. On the civil side, it's always going to be 6 jurors in Florida state court, but in the federal system, the amount of jurors you can get depends. So on the Rule 48 of the Federal Rules of Civil Procedure, it says basically that you can get, for a civil trial, at least 6 jurors, and at most 12 jurors. And how many you get really depends on your local rules and how the judge is feeling that day, if there are no local rules in place for it. And so you could walk into a civil trial where you have to convince 12 people, or you can walk into a civil trial where you have to convince 6, 7, 8, or 10, or whatever, anywhere in the middle. The other thing that's a substantial difference between federal court and my jurisdiction, state court, is the way impeachment goes down. So in Florida state court, on the rules of impeachment, a party can be impeached by conviction, but you can only say, basically, isn't it true that you're a convicted felon, right? Or you've been convicted of a crime of dishonesty. And you cannot get into the actual charge. You can't say what it was. You can't say, isn't it true that you've been convicted of rape, for example. In federal court, you can. In federal court, you can say, isn't it true that you've been convicted of rape, or murder, or robbery, or whatever. Which obviously makes a huge difference, because if you're trying a case where the guy has a felony conviction, and that felony conviction is for rape, let's say, it makes a huge difference whether you're in state court or in federal court. Because in state court, all they'll get to hear, all the jury will get to hear is you have a felony conviction. The person says yes, and that's the end of that. Not great, but also not a big deal. In federal court, though, they'll hear that guy's a rapist. So, for what it's worth, that could make a significant difference in your case. The other thing that's different for impeachment between federal court and Florida state court is that the federal rules allow what's called impeachment by prior instances of dishonesty. What that basically means is if the witness has in the past been dishonest, and it's not a criminal charge, it's not a criminal conviction, nothing like that. Just, you know, I don't know, I lied to my friend, I lied on my exam, I faked a library card, you know, whatever. Something that's not criminal. You can bring out all the different times that that person has lied in the past. Whereas in Florida state court, you cannot do that. So in Florida state court, if the person can be a witness that you know, you can prove is a constant liar, has lied 1,000 times leading up to his testimony. Well, you can't bring that out. The jury will not hear that this person has lied 1,000 times because the rules of impeachment are different. And so the 1,000 different prior instances of dishonesty are out in Florida state court, but are in federal court. So basically, as far as that's concerned, what you have is a system where the ability to challenge a witness's credibility is substantially better in the federal system than it is in the Florida state system, but the ability to pick a fair jury is one of those things where you don't really have it on the federal side, and you do have it to a pretty good extent on the state side. And finally, I think the only other main difference that you will encounter in federal court is by no means an exhaustive list of things that are different. This is just the things that I consider to be the main differences between the two systems. But the last thing that I consider to be somewhat of a main difference is that in federal court, pretty much across the land, there are a lot of judges that will not let you come from out of behind the podium. So basically they will say, counsel, you know, if you're doing anything, you do it behind the podium. You cannot get out from behind the podium when you're cross-examining. You cannot get out from behind the podium when you're opening. You cannot get out from behind the podium when you're closing. You're basically stuck to the podium at all times. Which sucks because, especially for a guy like me, I don't use notes in opening statement or closing argument. I like to have no barrier between me and the jury. I like to have that connection. And so for me, the advantage of not having to use notes during opening statements or closing arguments is completely eliminated by the fact that now I'm stuck behind a podium, so I have that barrier between the jury and I, and it's for absolutely no reason whatsoever other than those are the rules. But anyway, guys, that's it for now. If you like the video, go ahead and like the video. Go ahead and hit that notification bell, that subscribe button, and that way you can catch the videos when they come out next. That's it for now. Catch you later.